Hi, I'm Dave Halleck from PollScheduling.com, and today we're going to go through value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is a great tool, typically out of the Lean toolbox, and what it does for us is a couple things. Helps us understand our current process, identifies non-value added or waste in the current process, and these are the areas we want to target for improvement. And then it's a tool to develop what we call a future state map, which is what we'd like it to look like in the future. Whenever I'm doing value stream mapping with clients, typically what I tell them is, try to envision yourself as the product. Cut your head off, mount it to the product. Follow the product through the process and see what happens to you. And what we're usually looking for is what adds value from the customer's perspective. When are we doing something that changes the form, fit, or function of the product? Now, the reason I love the doctor's office example is twofold. When I'm doing training, I like to get people out of their environment because they often can grasp the concepts better. And the second thing is, in the doctor's office example, you've lived this process. You are the product. You have been processed. You are the customer, so you can identify with it. So let's get started. What we're doing in value stream mapping is we want to account for every second in the process. So from the time I decide I need to go to the doctor until the time the healing begins, we want to account for every second in that process. Okay? So let's get started. First step in the process, I got to call a doctor on the telephone. So I pick up the phone, I call the doctor. And when I call my doctor, I rarely get a human being. In fact, I have a high-tech doctor. What I get is a computerized answer machine. So a computerized voice talks to me. And it says something like, okay, what's your ailment? Who's your primary physician? What's your insurance carrier? Your social security number, the name of your firstborn child, and all this other information. So I give it all this information, and the computer says to me, someone will call you back within 4 hours. I say, whew, that's a long time. So I hang up the phone, and the next step in the process is waiting. I'm staring at that phone for 4 hours waiting. Now, it's always around 4 hours. They're never late. They're pretty good about that. All right? So I'm sitting there waiting, and finally the phone rings, and I pick it up, and they say, is this Mr. Hallett? And I say, yes. And they say, you called earlier. Let's get some information. And then she wants me to repeat all the information I already gave the computer. I said, I gave you guys the information. She says, give me the information. And then she says, well, what's wrong with you? I said, man, my ear is killing me. I got to get right in there. And she says, oh, no, it's going to be like a week. And this is what I call the negotiation phase. So she says it's going to be a week. I say I got to be in there in 15 minutes. We go back and forth and back and forth. And finally she says, oh, I just noticed next Tuesday, which is like 4 days from now, I had an opening. Someone canceled. I slide in there. I said, you just noticed that, huh? She says, yes. I said, if that's the best you can do, I'll take it. So she gives me the appointment. I hang up the phone. What's the next step in the process? The next step is waiting. So now I'm waiting. How long am I waiting for? Well, I got to go to next Tuesday. It's 4 days away. My appointment turned out to be 10 in the morning. My doctor's like 20 minutes from my house. So about 9:30, because I'm an on-time kind of guy, I got to start getting ready for this appointment. So I get my coat on, I go out. This is a transport step. So I go out, I get in my car, I transport myself to the doctor's office. I leave early because I live in Buffalo. It might be snow. You never know what can happen. So I get there, I transport myself from my car into the waiting room. And when I open the door of the waiting room, there's this big, huge line. And it's lined up from here up. And so I get in the line. And I wait and I move and I wait and I move and I wait and I move. And finally I get to the front of the line. And there's this guy back there. There's a little hole in the wall. And he says, give me all this information that I already gave him twice. And then he says, you're going to have to go sit down and wait. I said, okay. So I go sit down and wait. My doctor's office is great. They got CNN Doctor's Office channel. They got all these magazines, big cushy chairs, armrests, all this stuff. So I'm sitting in the armrest. I got the magazine and I'm reading. How long am I waiting for? Well, rarely do I ever get in at 10 o'clock if my appointment's 10 o'clock. I think it happened once when I was first appointment of the day. It's usually about 20 minutes to 40 minutes late. It's been as bad as an hour and a half before. In fact, If it goes beyond a half hour, I go in line again, get up to that little hole in the wall and try to expedite the situation from my manufacturing background. So finally, someone comes through that door and they say, "Mr. Hall?" I say, "Yes, come with me." So I go with them. And she takes me to a couple places on the way to the examining room. She says, let's get your height and weight. And I say, it's my ear. She says, get on the scale. So I get on the scale. My weight seems to go up. My height's actually gone down a little as I've gotten older. Maybe that has something to do with why my ears kill me. I don't know. So she does all that stuff, takes me to this room. She says, okay, I'm gonna walk out of here. You're gonna put this gown on. Take all your clothes off, put the gown on. I said, it's my ear. She says, get the gown on. So I said, okay. So I put the gown on. She also said, when you get the gown on, get up on that table. So I get the gown on, get up on the table, and it's kind of cold back here because it's real thin and that table's cold. And so now I gotta wait. Now I've been here before. There's no magazines. I bring a book. So I got my book and I'm reading. And about 10-15 minutes go by. Finally, a doctor comes in. Now the doctor's same first name as I do, has kids the same age and stuff. We do what I call the small talk phase. So we do finish the small talking up, and finally he says, "Dave, what's wrong with you?" I said, "My ear is killing me." So he takes a look in there with this thing, and he starts laughing, and he says, "That thing is nasty." I said, "I know, it's killing me." He says, "I'm going to have to send you to an ear, throat, nose specialist," or whatever those things are called. I go, "Oh, you got to be kidding me." So he writes me the script, and I go out, I get in line, I do my copay, I get in my car, I drive home, we're on a transport step again, and I call Dr. Sarah, who is the specialist, and I go through all those steps I already went through again, and I negotiate really, really hard this time. So about 3 days later, I've gone through all those steps, I've gotten myself there, I've gone through the line, waiting room, all that stuff, and I'm on the table in the gown. And Dr. Sarah comes in, does a little bit of small talk, not as much because I don't know her. And then she takes a look at my ear and she starts laughing. She said, "That thing is nasty." I said, "I know, that's why I'm here." So she says, "Well, I'm going to have to write you a prescription. It'll kill like everything in your body." I said, "Oh man, is it going to kill my body?" She said, "No, just the bad stuff." I said, "Okay, if you say so." So I get the script from her. Oh, and before I leave, what she does is, I don't know if you've seen these, they got these machines on the wall, and it shoots this hot water stuff in your ear and sucks the bad stuff out, and that felt really good and provides some temporary relief. So I get that done, get my script, I go out, wait in line, do the copay, drive home. But on my way home, I stop at the pharmacy because I'm going to get this thing filled right away. Got to keep this lead time down as short as possible. So I go in the pharmacy, and there's a big, huge line here, so I get in line, and I wait, and I move, and I wait, and I move, and I wait, and I move. And finally, I get to the front of the line, and they say to me, "Okay, you got a script?" And I give it to them, and she says, "Okay, it's going to take a little while. Go wander around our store. Maybe you'll buy something." So I wander around the store, and I'm looking at stuff, and I don't buy anything. But after about 20 minutes, they call me up, and I get my prescription, and they explain all the hazards of it to me, and then I whip out my credit card, and she says, "Oh, no, we don't have one of those machines back here. If you want to use a credit card, you got to go to the front of the store." So I go to the front of the store, it's a big line, I wait and move, I wait and move, and I get to the front line, and I give them the credit card, and they process it, and they let me go. So I'm out the door, I'm back in my car, I drive home, I walk in the door, I take off my shoes, fill up a glass of water, and take my medicine, and the healing has begun. Okay, stopwatch ends. How long was that whole process? Well, the lead time for this process was about 7 days. And what was the value added time for this process? Well, the value time really is the only time when they were changing about the form, fit, or function of product, which is me, or doing something I was really willing to pay extra for. And there's a couple steps here I can think of. I got one, the initial exam. 2, specialist repeated some of those initial steps, but she did write the script and the sucker outer thing. So we got the specialist. And the third step, the pharmacist filling the prescription and the actual drugs themselves I'd be willing to pay for. So the drugs, I don't know, probably talking about, to be generous, maybe 10 minutes. Okay? Alright, so we got 7 days of lead time, we got 10 minutes of value-added activities. All the difference in between there is non-value added or waste. These are all the opportunities for improvement. In fact, there's a thing we call the value ratio. And we take this and we divide it by this. 10 minutes divided by 7 days. And we get some very, very small percentage. Okay? Alright, so that's our current state. Now, what we do when we're developing the future state, I like to use a process I call go to utopia and then back off for reality. So instead of worrying about how it works today, I want to start with a clean sheet of paper and redesign the process, not really in reality, kind of my utopia. If I didn't have to worry about practicality or investment or anything, just from a pure lean perspective, from the customer's perspective, how would I want it to work? I start there, and then I back off for reality. And what you find is you accomplish a lot more this way. If you start with the way it is and kind of inch forward, you'll make minor improvements. If you start with a clean sheet and then back off a little bit, you'll make huge incremental improvements. So, there's a bunch of ones. Let me give you mine. At least I got one version. We might talk about a couple more versions. So here's my future state. Going forward, clean sheet, utopia. I wake up this morning, my ears killing me. What do? Put on my shoes, put on my coat, and I walk out the door. Transportation doesn't add any value, so I want to put that doctor's office as close to my house as I can, but I don't really like the looks of it, so I don't want it next door. I do have sidewalks in the village I live in, so I'm going to put them about a block away. So I go out the door, I walk the block. I get to the doctor's office, and when I open the door, there's not that huge waiting room. There's just a hallway. And I know from being here before, my doctor's 2 down and left. So I go 2 down and left, and when I get there, he doesn't got a patient, because if I got to wait for another patient, that's non-value added for me. He's doing some paperwork and whatever, I don't know. So I go in there. He looks up, he says, "Hey Dave, how you doing?" I said, "Hey Dr. Dave, we do the small talk phase. I'm uncomfortable eliminating that, even though it doesn't add value." He says, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Oh man, my ear is killing me." He says, "Let's take a look in there." He looks in there, he starts laughing. He says, "Oh my God, that thing is nasty. I'm going to send you to a specialist." "Where does he send me?" He goes, "Well, 2 doors down the right is Dr. Sarah. She'll be waiting for me." I said, "Really?" So I go 2 doors down on the right. And when I go in there, Dr. Sarah looks up and says, "Hey, Dave, let's take a look at that ear." I said, "How did you know I was coming?" She said, "Oh, Dr. Dave sent me an instant message. Let's take a look." So she looks in there, she starts laughing. She says, "That thing is nasty." And then she does the sucking out stuff, and she says, "I got a script ready for you. It'll kill everything in your body." I said, "Well, kill my body?" She says, "No." I go, "Where do I go?" She goes, "You go down the end of the hall." So I go down the end of the hall, and when I get there, there's this little hand hanging out a hole in the wall with a prescription. And I said, "Is that for me?" And he says, "You're Dave, right?" I said, "How did you know?" And she said, "Dr. Sarah sent the instant message. You're good to go." I said, "Don't I have to pay you or something?" He said, "No, we got your credit card number on file." I go, "Great." And when I look right to the right of where I got my prescription, there's a drinking fountain. So I go to drinking fountain, take my meds, the healing begins.